Katie oversees Animal Equality's International Corporate Outreach Department, working with companies to improve conditions for animals worldwide. She has worked in the animal protection movement for over a decade, focusing on corporate outreach, campaigns, and media relations. Katie's today's topic is going beyond good and bad cops, strategies to make the most of out of coalition work. This presentation will explore about the diverse tactics, the power of timing, and how to make the most of knowledge sharing. So please welcome Katie Arth. And Katie, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you. Let me share my screen here. Okay, great. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to attend this session. As Martin said, my name is Katie Arth, and I am the International Director of Corporate Outreach at Animal Equality. I'm going to talk about some of the reasoning behind working together, as well as strategies that might inspire you to improve your relationships with other groups in your countries. A little about me. I have worked in the animal rights movement in the US since 2005 and have had the opportunity to create a unique career that has consisted of working with companies, collaborating with animal advocates around the world, working on campaign and outreach strategy, working with reporters, leading protests, handing out literature in the street, and even at one point in time running a vegan hot dog stand. No matter which organization I worked for, I have always made it a priority to stay out of drama and personal conflicts, which is part of the reason why I wanted to give this talk today. I'm sure that all of you are very talented and skilled and have great ideas for how to improve the world for animals. But similar to how a song is rarely good without multiple artists, we are also better when we work together. Here's a short video to hopefully make you smile and get excited about what we can achieve together. Hopefully you can hear it. These are chickens playing Shape of You by Ed Sheeran. And while the video is cute and shows chickens playing instruments, which I love, there is a much more serious reason why we need to work together. We're doing something that has never been done before. Social justice movements for humans still haven't achieved their goals, and we are advocating for other species. Powerful industries and people make huge profits off of harming animals, and the animals need us to be as effective as possible. The other reason why we need to do this is because it works. An example of this is the Open Wing Alliance, which has over 60 member groups all over the world working to improve conditions for hens used for eggs and chickens used for meat. Together, all of our organizations are able to move huge multinational companies to do things for animals that they don't want to do. Our power collectively is so much more than the sum of our funding or our staff. Many of us are lucky to live in countries where there are other groups working for animals. While this is hugely valuable, it can sometimes feel like it creates more problems than it solves. Here's what we can do about it. First, recognize that coalition work can be difficult and that we won't always agree with other organizations' strategies and decisions. Second, we need to specialize and know our strengths. Third, get creative and try new things together. And fourth, and lastly, support each other. It is important to know that coalition work can be difficult. It isn't your fault or other groups you work with. What I refer to as the elephants, the big things that are always there and we don't like to talk about, are competition, strategy disagreements, and personal conflicts. Competition. Most of us are competitive. We are working hard for animals and we want to be the best and seen as influential in our field. This is normal. When we do similar work, we're reaching out to the same donors, getting attention from the same media outlets, and activating the same volunteers in our countries. There is a fine balance with competition because some of it is good. If it motivates you to work harder, be more creative and strategic, then it is beneficial. But when competition turns from trying to be our best to not supporting others, that is when we find problems. When working with other groups, we have to find balance so that the competition stays friendly and supportive instead of negative. Next, strategy disagreements. When I first got involved in animal rights work, I thought I knew everything. In my mind, I had all of the answers, and anyone who didn't agree with me was sabotaging the animal rights movement. Over the last 15 years, I've learned that my opinion has changed on various strategies. For example, I used to be completely opposed to any form of welfare work, and now I oversee Animal Equality's International Corporate Outreach Department, where we specifically work to improve the welfare of animals that will be farmed and we can't save. In my youthful days, I would have called current me a sellout. This is because my opinion has evolved and changed based on time and experience. We have to remember that we don't know everything. And while we may disagree, the person we disagree with is well-intentioned and doing what they think is best for animals. The enemy is not the group working for animals in a different way than you, but the industry that abuses animals for profit. And personal conflict. There is no way to avoid all personal conflict. It happens. We are all human, and we fight, hurt each other's feelings, hold grudges, and get wrapped up into drama. Just because we can't eliminate this conflict doesn't mean we can't minimize it. So, we can't escape the elephants. There will always be competition, strategy disagreements, and personal conflicts, but there are some key things in mind to minimize the negative impacts. First, get to know each other. This sounds basic, but in the world of social media, people are often looking for a fight instead of to find what we have in common. Have a call with someone, meet for coffee, ask about their hobbies, ask how they got involved in animal rights, or what they find exciting in the movement right now. Knowing your counterparts at other groups puts a human face to some of the conflicts you will inevitably face during coalition work. Instead of saying, "Ugh, I always hate it when animal equality does this thing," we can reframe that situation and change it to, "Katie's been working on a project that I don't really like." Even just naming the person helps us see other groups as your colleagues and fellow activists. Next, keep your concerns offline. Social media is an incredible tool, but it also tears us apart. I live by the rule of never speaking negatively of other groups online. I know it's not for everyone, but it's helped me over the years. That is not because I agree with everyone or never have personal conflicts, but instead, it is because social media is often about us winning in front of an audience and listening to instead of listening and having a meaningful dialogue. When I was at PETA, an activist that I had met and worked with in person posted on Facebook, "I wish everyone at PETA would kill themselves," because he disagreed on strategy and tactics. When I saw it, I was on public transit on the way home from working a festival, handing out vegan starter kits all day. I couldn't believe it. What could I have done that would upset someone so much? The reality is, he didn't think all PETA staff should actually die, but he wanted to get attention by posting something controversial. We need not to get sucked into these traps. I was genuinely hurt. And that's the thing. Behind organizations and social media profiles, we're all human. And when we remember that, we can make smarter decisions and build stronger relationships. And lastly, let it go. If you can't change someone's mind or feel like you will never get along with a person, that's okay. We have to accept that we can't change people. Maybe that means you don't work together as much because it is just too stressful. Or if you have someone else and there's a personal conflict, you can ask someone else to keep contact with that person. We have to prioritize the work above our personal issues in order to make the most change. So the most valuable resource in the animal rights movement is the incredible people in it. People who are clever, creative, passionate, hardworking, thoughtful, and that's all of you in this session. We're going to send you all into breakout rooms of 5 people and give you 7 minutes to share what got you involved in animal rights. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people because we can all relate to that journey of becoming active for animals, and almost everyone has a different story. So whether you're brand new or have been in the movement for decades, we all have a lot to learn from each other. So let's break everyone out.
Okay, everyone should be back, so welcome back to room C.
Welcome back. I'm just getting this set up real quick and then I will be ready to go. So hold on one second. Sorry for the delay. I hope you guys found that you had some stuff in common. I know Peter, who is in my group, also learned about animal rights and vegetarianism, but finally went vegan and got more active when he went to college, which is exactly what I did. So we all have a lot of the same things going on. Okay, so the next thing about acknowledging the elephants is it's time to figure out how we work best together. So it's not just that we should or that we can, but how. And the first step is to know what you're good at. A lot of us want to be good at everything, but with limited resources, it's better to focus on what you do well and let others do what they do well. In this situation, it's good to focus on our differences. This happened to me recently, where I had an idea that I really believe in, and I think it's going to work really well, but it requires a lot of lobbying and experience with legislation. And Animal Equality is a smaller organization, and I'm not a lobbyist. So if I were to try to do this, I would have to basically start from scratch, trying to figure out how to pass city council resolutions on top of all of the other work that I already do. So I thought about it and it kept sitting on my to-do list. And I was like, man, someone needs to do this. And I don't know that it's me. So instead of trying to force myself into a different situation, trying to build new skills I didn't have, I went to someone at another organization that does focus on this type of work. And I asked them to consider it because I'm really passionate about this idea. And they're now moving forward with it. And I can continue to prioritize Animal Equality's international corporate outreach work instead of losing time trying to figure out how I can pass a city council resolution. So let's say that Group A and Group B want to work together on a campaign to ban cages in their country. Both Group A and Group B have different things that they are good at. They had a meeting and decided that they want to draft sample legislation, release an investigation, and get public support to make sure the legislation passes. Each group is strong in parts of what they want to achieve, but not all of them. So sure, Group A could figure out how to do and release an investigation, and Group B could draft the sample legislation, but that would be really inefficient. If Group A has lobbying experience, then it's better for them to work on the sample legislation. It will take them less time and they'll make less errors. And similarly, we should let Group B handle the investigation. And here's a real world example. So during the last few months, COVID has had devastating impacts on humans and animals. One of those impacts is that when slaughterhouses shut down and they can't kill the animals for meat due to public health risks, animals on farm are killed so that the farmers don't lose more money to feed, house, and provide them water before they get to the slaughterhouse. Some of these killing methods include suffocating an entire barn full of chickens with foam, or turning off ventilation systems in pig barns so that the pigs overheat and die. World Animal Protection and Animal Equality Brazil wanted to do something to prevent these extremely cruel deaths. So when working together, we had to see what we're good at. World Animal Protection has a very professional image in Brazil and has lobbying experience as well as political contacts. Animal Equality, on the other hand, has a strong digital action team and has been running corporate campaigns for over 3 years. Our organizations are different, but these key strengths helped us make progress on this issue together. So what did we do? We both played to our strengths. Animal Equality Brazil ran an aggressive social media campaign with an online petition and specifically targeted individual members of the Ministry of Agriculture with thousands of comments about this issue. Meanwhile, World Animal Protection continued to work behind the scenes with people in the government. Within 2 months, the head minister of agriculture released a statement in support of the government setting regulations for depopulation, and even engaged directly with animal equality volunteers on social media. We've gotten the government and influential people's attention. So now, World Animal Protection is continuing to have a meaningful dialogue to make changes to the government's allowable practices for depopulation. The government also knows that if they stop making progress in those conversations, our volunteers will be back, which helps influence them to take this issue seriously. So while I was working on this presentation, I decided to take a break and go on Facebook and saw this brief exchange between two people I know who are lawyers at different animal protection organizations. This simple exchange shows how we can support each other by asking for help when we don't know something, as opposed to trying to cram years of experience into an hour so we can attempt to do something ourselves. When people are willing to ask for help and to offer it, working together can be just as simple as a Facebook post. Part of knowing what you're good at is also knowing what you're bad at. We often spend our time focusing on our strengths, but it is also valuable to focus on our weaknesses. So while we go through what I'm bad at, I challenge you to put things you're bad at in the chat too. Again, this is about efficiency. So I personally am bad at social media, making videos, most creative work, super detail-oriented things, which is why I could never be a lawyer, and a lot of technology. Could I get better at these things? Of course. But just because you are bad at something doesn't mean you need to improve it. Let's say, for me to become decent at using Instagram for activism, and like pretty good, it would take me 30 hours, but I already know someone who's excellent at it. Then it makes more sense for me to use my 30 hours on something else and let that other person be excellent at Instagram. On the other hand, if I'm okay at public speaking and with practice can become great at public speaking, and there aren't enough good public speakers with my expertise, it might be better for me to choose to spend more time practicing that and making it a priority. So let's see what else you guys are bad at. Did anyone put anything in the chat? Let's see. Nope, I can't see it, but I hope that you guys take a second to think about it. So Peter can't sit still very well. I am the opposite. I can sit at my desk all day long. And I think what you would get out of this as you think about it is that there are a lot of things that someone else is bad at that you're really strong in. So, you know, it looks like we've got some people who aren't great at social media, fundraising, reading super detailed documents and reports. But what you'll notice is probably some of you on this call are really good at those things. So when we acknowledge that we can't do everything well, we can be a stronger team by working together. Part of knowing what you're good at is relying on others. An example of this is the current Open Wing Alliance Subway campaign to get the company to adopt the European Chicken Commitment. This campaign consists of 21 organizations from 15 European countries. All 21 organizations could create their own separate campaigns, strategies, text, etc., to pressure the company. But we save time, our most precious resource, by trusting each other and working together. In this case, the Albert Schweitzer Foundation has volunteered to lead the campaign by creating its graphics, sample text, videos, and more, and is sharing it so the other organizations can participate in the campaign without investing all the same resources. We will win this campaign faster and be able to focus more time on other important work by working together and sharing our resources. I know that many of you are volunteers, run local organizations in your community, and are doing things on a very tight budget. You are amazing. What you don't need to do is make decisions that cost more money time, and stress if you don't need to. Over the years, I've seen many people choose to make their own leaflets, protest signs, do their own research papers and polls because they believe their wording, image, or slight change in messaging is better. Remember when I said how I used to think I knew everything? I was definitely one of those people. I would spend time critiquing and complaining about the language of the vegan outreach materials, even though they so graciously shipped me thousands for free. And I thought my changes would have made everything so much better. And maybe my ideas would have improved the literature I used, but likely not enough to make it worth creating my own. Many years ago, I used to set up animal rights tables in shopping centers, parks, beaches, you name it, all over the place. And in order to set these up, I had to carry really heavy boxes of literature, tables, and a canopy by myself. Back then, people would see me walking and offer to help, and I almost always said no. Looking back, I could have gotten help, which I really needed. Those boxes were heavy, and had an opportunity to connect with someone new and made my life easier so that I could keep doing this type of work longer. There are valid pros and cons to working with big groups, but if they're offering to help you, it might make sense to say yes. Next is get creative. There are so many things we can accomplish together and so many ways to do it. After 15 years in this movement, I've never felt more optimistic that we are making a difference, and part of that is because I'm working closely with other groups to make sure we all succeed in our work for animals. So you may remember how I mentioned earlier that I'm not that creative. So I'm going to share some strategies I know of and have been a part of, but there is so much more we can do. Corporate outreach work is very coalition oriented and incredibly collaborative. A main strategy we use is a good cop, bad cop model, but this doesn't have to be limited to working with companies. So in this case, there are more aggressive groups that do campaigns and more reasonable groups that serve as negotiators. But as long as we work for and ask for the same things, this is a very productive way to work together. It doesn't necessarily mean we talk all the time or have a bunch of meetings, but instead we develop strategies to complement the others. Another example of this is in one of the countries Animal Equality works with, a lot of groups want to do information campaigns right now because of COVID, something I'm sure many of you guys are thinking about because traditional campaigning doesn't really work today. And so some of them want to focus on cage-free campaigns towards the public, which is great. We have to educate them. But instead of having, 3 groups do all the same type of thing, what we're doing is Animal Equality is going to work on a campaign targeting producers to show them how many companies are choosing to go cage-free and how popular it is, while the other groups are focusing on getting more consumers to care. This is about how we complement each other and how we can work together without necessarily being, doing the same work or signing on to the same things. Another example is to get multiple groups to sign on to a letter, campaign, or join a demonstration. Because when someone sees a list of 5 groups, 10 groups, even just 3, it gives us more credibility than if it was just us. And in some cases, we're able to even extend beyond our typical animal protection coalitions and move into other sectors to support other groups and have them support us back. So let's say that you are working on to ban cages in your country. We're going to break you up into groups of 4 or 5 for about 5 minutes and see what ideas you can come up with. I've come up with some of the things in this scenario that you could set as goals in order to get you to the final goal of banning cages. In this situation, our theory of change tells us that we want to get 60% of the public on our side in order to be able to pass legislation. We want to get the largest egg producer to sign a cage-free commitment. And we want to build relationships with 10 influential politicians. Now we have to figure out, how do we do that? I encourage you to think outside the box and think of something that hasn't been done before. When we come back, let's have one person from each group post their ideas in the chat. Let's break up now. Ideas, I hope you guys did too. I was really impressed. We had people who wanted to, do negotiation, people who wanted to do really bold, exciting demonstrations. So really cool to just hear your ideas. And it was very clear we had different strengths, and ask different questions. And I think that's how we make our campaigns more successful. So to finish up, the last topic I have, and I'll go pretty quickly, is, we have to work together to create a supportive culture. If there's nothing else you get out of today, it is to think about how to be more supportive. So when I looked up the definition of support, I realized that it comes in a number of forms. They vary from literal support, like a table leg, physically supports a table. Emotional support, where we advocate for someone else. It can be financial, like support with a donation. And there are so many ways to support each other. Yet I bet that many of you feel alone. You feel the weight of animal suffering on your shoulders. You feel guilty if a project fails because you failed the animals. But I want to remind you, none of that is true. And when we build a supportive community, it's easier to know that in your heart and keep working for animals longer. So there's no manual to figure out how to create a supportive culture, but instead we have to use our common sense, think about others, and make it a priority. When we support each other, we make it so that there are more people doing good for a better future for animals. And as I said, a lot of things feel like common sense, and you can see here, getting to know each other, promoting other groups, utilizing social media in a nice way, making time for people. Something I've done lately is offering mentorship, as well as asking more experienced people to support me. But most of all, we just need to be each other's cheerleaders. So we have about 5 minutes left. So thank you all for attending this talk at the end of a long weekend of many webinars and a lot of screen time. It means a lot to me that you showed up, paid attention, and value what we can do together. So now, any time for questions.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I would like to remind you all that we post questions through Slido, so please do that when you have your questions. So far, we have none. When there will be some questions, you can also vote for questions you liked more, and that you will, on those who would you would like to see answered. So please go on. I will post the link in the group chat in a second. So here you go, and remember that we are in the room C. You have to you choose the correct room. And we have the first question from Jennifer. How do you go about solving competition, since in the end, everyone seems to want to be the first one to achieve something?
So I think it's okay to want that. I think what we do is we have to really get to know each other, so we cheer for other people. Because if you figure out something that's going to do more effectively, something to educate people and make people passionate about fish welfare, I am happy that it happened a day sooner. And so are the other people working in this movement, because we're all really working for the same thing. So I think we have to keep in mind that, it's not a race, but we of course want to do it the best and the quickest that we can. And I think that's a lot of where relationships come in, because I can, congratulate someone for releasing an investigation, even if I had something similar, because I'm just happy more people are going to see it. And if we change our mindsets, we can really change our culture as a movement and eliminate some of that competition that we just don't need.
Thank you. Next question is from Jose Ramon. You said we should focus on winning our real enemy, the industry. For me and for many alternative protein startups, food companies are potential allies. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. I just was talking about not focusing on disagreements between ourselves, and instead, if is looking at who is responsible. But we should absolutely work with food companies, to introduce alternative proteins, like you mentioned, to change welfare practices so that animals who we can't save have less awful lives. These things are incredibly important. But if you get frustrated because another group did something you disagree with, it's important to remember who is harming animals. And it's not that other group who released a campaign you don't like.
Thank you. Next question is from Thomas. What are some tips on working with another group? Do differences in internal culture ever damage collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we have to do is remember that what I ask of another organization, I can't expect it to be as fast, them to be as responsive, or as thorough as I would ask my own team when I work in an organization, because those people have other priorities too. So we have to kind of adjust our expectations with each other and also be honest about what we can give and what we need.
Thank you. And we have one last question and time for one last question. So this is a good fit. Last question is from Ben. What have been the great success of the movement, and how do we get more?
There are so many. It's great to not be able to count. In Europe, we've got countries banning fur farms. We've got, the huge booming alternative protein industry, banning of circuses. I personally worked on a campaign here to end a circus that was a 35-year-long campaign with hundreds of organizations and thousands of volunteers over decades. We're seeing more and more every day, and it is because there are more of us, and times are changing and public attitudes are changing, so we can accomplish more too.
Great, thank you. So that was the last question. Thank you, Katie, very much for your talk. And this is the moment for all of us to unmute ourselves and give Katie a round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your time. And feel free to reach out to me. My email is katia@animalequality.org. And you're always welcome to reach out to me, or if you're in the Open Wing Alliance, I'm on Slack. Definitely, happy to support you guys in ways we can at Animal Equality, as well as just connect as people trying to do good things for animals. Thanks, guys.
Thank you again, Katie. That was Katie Arth from Animal Equality.